The taste of expensive champagne still coated my tongue like metal when I realized the deck was empty. 72 hours before my 30th birthday. My husband had placed his hand on my back, a touch that felt more like a shove than a caress. Now, the GPS is smashed, the radio is dead, and the Larkhaven is drifting toward a storm. They think I am a tragedy, but I am about to become their reckoning. My name is Isolde Fairmonti, and the last thing I remember before the world dissolved into black water was the sound of crystal clinking against crystal. It was a sharp, delicate sound, like the breaking of a very small bone. That sound has been replaying in my mind on a loop, syncing with the throbbing ache behind my temples. I remember the smell of the air that night. It was thick with the scent of salt water, expensive cigars, and the cloying sweetness of the vintage champagne my father had insisted on opening. We were celebrating, or so they said, a reconciliation. A new chapter for the Fairmonti family. I should have known that in my family. New chapters are usually written in the ink of someone else's blood. I was standing near the railing of the Larkhaven, looking out at the dark expanse of the Atlantic. The ocean was calm then, a sheet of black glass reflecting the moonlight. My sister, Celeste, was laughing behind me. Her laugh has always been distinct. It is not a sound of joy. It is a performance, a high-pitched, musical scale designed to draw attention, to say, "Look at me. Look how happy and rich and carefree I am." She was holding court with the small crew we had brought along, charming them, making them feel like they were part of our world for just a moment. I remember thinking how exhausted she must be, having to maintain that facade every second of every day. Then I felt the hand on my back. It was Harrison, my husband. His palm was warm against the silk of my evening gown. He slid his hand up my spine, resting it just between my shoulder blades. To an observer, it would have looked like a gesture of affection, a loving husband grounding his wife, sharing a quiet moment away from the festivities. But I knew the weight of that hand. It was heavy, possessive. It was not a caress. It was a steer. He was guiding me, subtly, controlling my posture, my direction, my very existence in that space. "You look tense, Izzy," he had whispered, his breath smelling of mint and the scotch he had been nursing earlier. But he was not drinking now. I realized that only in hindsight. Everyone else had a glass in hand, filled and refilled by the attentive stewards. Harrison was holding a tumbler of sparkling water. "I am fine," I had lied, leaning slightly away from his touch. "Just tired. You work too hard," he said, his voice dropping to that smooth, practiced baritone that had charmed me 5 years ago. "You need this trip. We all do. Your father just wants to make things right before the big day." The big day. My 30th birthday. It was exactly 72 hours away. I looked across the deck at my father, Gideon Fairmonti. He was sitting in one of the plush white leather armchairs, a cigar clamped between his teeth. Watching us, he was not smiling. Gideon does not smile unless there is a camera present or a deal has just been signed. He was watching me with the same expression he wore when he inspected the shipping manifests at the docks. It was a look of calculation. He was not looking at his daughter. He was looking at an asset, or perhaps a liability. Harrison pressed a fresh glass of champagne into my hand. It was the frantic, overly polite sort of service that should have triggered my alarms. "Drink up," he said. "To us, to 30. I raised the glass. The crystal caught the deck lights, fracturing them into tiny rainbows. I took a sip. The taste was wrong. It was subtle, hidden beneath the dry, crisp notes of the grapes, but it was there, a metallic tang, like sucking on a penny. I frowned and lowered the glass, looking at the golden liquid. "Is it corked?" Harrison asked, his voice spiking with a sudden, sharp anxiety that did not fit the moment. "No," I said, "it just tastes off." I did not get to finish the sentence. The horizon tilted. It was a slow, sliding sensation, as if the ocean had suddenly decided to become a hill. The deck rushed up to meet me. I tried to grab the railing, but my fingers were numb. They felt like sausages. clumsy and disconnected from my brain. I heard the glass shatter on the teak floor. The sound was deafening. Then, voices, distant, like they were speaking through a wall of water. "She is out." Someone said. It sounded like Celeste. Not worried, just factual. Time. That was Gideon. Curt, professional. 1 hour to the drop point. Harrison replied. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask what drop point meant. I wanted to stand up and slap the calculation off my father's face. But my body had resigned. Darkness folded over me, heavy and absolute. And the last thing I felt was Harrison's hands again, not helping me up, but checking my pulse. Clinical and cold. I wake up to fire. My skin is burning. That is the first sensation. A raw, stinging heat that covers my face and arms. I try to lick my lips, but my tongue is like sandpaper. I taste salt and bile. My head feels like it has been split open with a dull axe. I force my eyes open, and the world is a blinding wash of white. The sun is directly overhead, a merciless white eye staring down at me. I squeeze my eyes shut again, groaning as the pain spikes behind my retinas. Harrison, I croak. My voice is a wrecked whisper. Silence. I try again, louder this time, forcing myself to sit up despite the nausea rolling in my stomach. Harrison, Dad. The only answer is the slap of water against the hull and the whistling of the wind. I scramble to my feet, swaying like a drunkard. I am still in my evening gown, though the silk is torn at the hem and stained with what looks like oil and salt. One of my heels is missing. I kick the other one off, feeling the hot teak of the deck burn the soles of my feet. The deck is empty. The white leather chairs are overturned. The table where we had our toast is bare. Stripped of the crystal glasses and the ice bucket, it is as if the party never happened. I run to the railing. The ocean is a deep, bruised purple, chopping violently. The calm waters of last night are gone. The air feels heavy, charged with static. Hello, I scream, my voice cracking. Is anyone there? I run toward the bridge. The command center of the Larkhaven. This is a 60-foot yacht, a vessel designed for luxury and safety. It does not just lose a crew and 3 passengers. The glass door to the bridge is sliding open and banging against its frame with the rhythm of the waves. I stumble inside, grabbing the captain's chair to steady myself. Where is the captain? Where is the crew? The control panel is a ruin. I stare at it, my brain refusing to process the visual data. It looks like someone took a sledgehammer to the electronics. The GPS screen is a spiderweb of cracked glass. The dials are smashed. Wires hang loose from the dashboard like severed veins, sparking intermittently. This was not an accident. Panic, cold and sharp, finally pierces through the fog of the drugs in my system. I reach for the radio handset. The VHF that is the lifeline of any vessel at sea. The cord has been ripped out, not disconnected, ripped. The plastic casing of the radio unit is shattered. I pat my body, searching for my phone. It is not in my dress pocket. I look around the floor. There, in the corner, near the fire extinguisher. I dive for it. It is my phone, or what is left of it. The screen is pulverized. The battery casing is bent. It looks like it was stomped on. Repeatedly. With the heel of a heavy boot, I back away. My breath coming in short. Shallow gasps. I need to think. I am Isolde Fairmonti. I am a forensic accountant. I look for patterns. I look for discrepancies. I do not panic. I force myself to leave the bridge and check the stern, the life raft. The Larkhaven carries 2 state-of-the-art inflatable life rafts, capable of holding 10 people each. They are mounted in canisters on the rear deck. I run to the stern, ignoring the way the boat lurches as a large wave hits the side. The canisters are gone. The metal brackets that held them are empty. There are scratch marks on the fiberglass, where they were hastily unbolted and thrown overboard. I grip the railing, my knuckles turning white. They are gone. All of them. Harrison, Celeste, Gideon, the crew. They did not fall off. They did not get swept away. They left. They left me. I look out at the horizon, to the west. The sky is a wall of charcoal. Clouds are stacking up like mountains. dark and bruised with rain. The wind is picking up, whistling through the rigging with a low, mournful tone. A storm is coming, and not just a summer squall. This is something massive. I check the fuel gauge on the secondary analog panel near the engine room hatch, praying it still works. The needle is hovering near empty. They drained the tanks, or they drove it until it was dry and then set it adrift. The realization hits me with the force of a physical blow, staggering me more than the waves. My birthday. If I die before I turn 30, the trust fund my grandfather Conrad left me dissolves. The voting rights for the controlling share of the Fairmonty shipping empire do not pass to me. They revert to the existing board, to Gideon. And in the event of my death without issue, the secondary beneficiary of my personal estate is my husband. Harrison knew. I think about the debt collectors who had been calling the house, the hushed conversations Harrison had on his second phone, the one he thought I did not know about. I think about the way Gideon looked at me, not with love, but with the annoyance one feels toward a contract clause that is difficult to navigate. They did not just kill me, they orchestrated a disappearance. If I am lost at sea, it takes time to declare death, but if the boat is found wrecked after a storm, with no body, it is a tragedy, a chaotic accident. The grieving husband, the devastated father, they will hold a memorial, they will cry on camera, they will sign the papers to claim the insurance and the trust fund. I am not a person to them. I never was. I am a legal obstacle. I am a signature they could not forge. So they decided to erase the hand that holds the pen. I look at the approaching storm. The waves are getting higher, capping with white foam. The Larkhaven is dead in the water, a $3 million coffin drifting aimlessly into the throat of a hurricane. They think I am dead. They think the ocean will finish what the drug started. They think they were thorough. I feel a strange sensation in my chest. It is not fear. It is too hot to be fear. It is rage, pure, distilled, high-octane rage. I grip the broken railing. The wind whips my hair across my face, stinging my eyes, but I do not blink. You made a mistake. Gideon, I whisper to the wind, you made a calculation error. You left me the boat, and as long as I have breath in my lungs, I am not a tragedy. I am the audit that is coming for you. I turn away from the horizon and head toward the engine room. I have work to do. The engine room of the Larkhaven smells of diesel and expensive polish, a scent that reminds me, ironically, of my childhood. My family has always smelled like industry masked by luxury. Sitting here on the metal grating, hugging my knees to my chest as the first true waves of the storm begin to hammer the hull. I am not thinking about the water rising outside. I am thinking about the paperwork. In my line of work, we have a saying, murder is rarely about passion. It is almost always about a ledger that does not balance. I work for Blackstone Ledger and Forensics. We are the people corporations call when the numbers stop making sense and the executives start sweating. I have spent the last 7 years of my life burying my nose in spreadsheets, tracing shell companies through the Cayman Islands and uncovering embezzlement schemes hidden in shipping manifests. I was the boring daughter, the quiet one, the one who preferred the sterile truth of mathematics to the messy, performative chaos of the Fairmonty dinner table. My father, Gideon, hated that about me. To Gideon Fairmonty, truth is a flexible commodity, something to be bent and shaped until it serves the bottom line. He built Fairmonty Coastal Freight into a logistics empire not by being the best, but by being the most ruthless. Our warehouses line the eastern seaboard like concrete teeth. We move everything: electronics, grain, luxury cars, and, if the rumors I always tried to ignore were true, things that are better left unlisted on customs declarations. But the empire was built on my grandfather's money. Conrad Fairmonty was a hard man, but he was an honest one. He died 10 years ago, leaving behind a will that was less of a bequest and more of a landmine. He knew his son. He knew Gideon viewed the company as a personal piggy bank and the employees as disposable friction. So Conrad did the one thing that could stop Gideon from stripping the company for parts. He locked the power away. The will was specific. It was a masterpiece of estate planning designed to strangle my father's greed. Conrad left 49% of the voting shares to Gideon. He left 2% to my sister, Celeste, and he left the remaining 49%, along with the controlling interest in the family trust, a liquid asset pool worth over $80 million to me. But there was a catch. There is always a catch. The condition was time. Conrad did not want an inexperienced 20-year-old running a shipping conglomerate, so he placed my shares and the trust in a lockbox legal structure. Gideon would act as the custodian until I turned 30, on the stroke of midnight of my 30th birthday. The stewardship would end. I would become the majority vote. I would have the power to audit the books, to fire the board, and to stop the shadowy hemorrhage of cash that Gideon had been overseeing for a decade. However, Conrad made one fatal error in his calculations. He assumed that a father would not eat his own young to keep power. The contingency clause, paragraph 14, section B, stated clearly that in the event of my death or permanent incapacitation prior to the age of majority, my interest would revert immediately and in equal parts to the surviving natural heirs, Gideon and Celeste. I can see the document in my mind as clearly as if it were projected on the bulkhead. I read it every year on my birthday, a ritual of reminder. Tomorrow is that birthday, if I am declared dead, or even missing and presumed dead. Before tomorrow ends, Gideon gets the control he has craved for 10 years, and Celeste gets the money she needs to fuel her life of vacuous glamour. Celeste, my older sister, the star. While I was studying tax law and forensic accounting, Celeste was curating a life on social media that cost roughly $50,000 a month to maintain. She is beautiful in the way a diamond is beautiful, hard, cold, and capable of cutting you if you hold her wrong. Gideon adores her. He understands her. She is a billboard for the Fairmonty brand. All shine and no substance. To Gideon, love is an investment strategy. You put affection in, and you expect a return in social capital or influence. Celeste paid dividends. I was a non-performing asset. Actually, I was worse than that. I was an auditor. I remember a dinner 3 months ago. I had come home for a weekend, and I made the mistake of asking Gideon about a discrepancy in the quarterly reports for the New Jersey hub. The shipping volume was up 30%, but the revenue was flat. That is a mathematical impossibility in legitimate logistics. Gideon had stopped eating. He wiped his mouth with a linen napkin, took a sip of his wine, and looked at me with eyes that were absolutely dead. "You worry too much about the minutiae, Isolde," he had said. "That is why you are unhappy. You look for cracks in the pavement instead of enjoying the walk." "I am not unhappy, Dad," I had replied. "I just want to make sure the company is safe. The company is my concern." He snapped. "Your concern is your husband. How is Harrison? Or is he tired of you analyzing his credit card statements too? That brings me to Harrison. Harrison Colebrook, the man I married 2 years ago, the man who is currently, I assume, piloting a smaller escape vessel or sitting on a rescue boat. Practicing his grieving face for the cameras. When I met Harrison, I thought he was a miracle. He was everything my family was not. He was a self-made architect, soft-spoken, kind. He didn't care about the Fairmonty name. He seemed to care about me. He listened when I talked about fraud triangles and asset forfeiture. He held me when the coldness of my family made me feel like I was freezing from the inside out. I thought our marriage was my sanctuary. I thought I had built a wall against my father's toxicity. I was so stupid. I was so incredibly stupid. I see now that Harrison wasn't a wall. He was a door my father installed so he could walk right into my bedroom and check my pulse while I slept. The signs were there. I just chose not to audit the man I loved. There were the late nights at the office that didn't match his billable hours, the sudden, frantic need to refinance our mortgage for an investment opportunity that he never fully explained. The way he would tense up when I walked into the room while he was on the phone. I brushed it all aside. I told myself that marriage means trust, and trust means not demanding to see the receipts. But the receipts always exist. Harrison was in debt, deep, drowning debt. I suspect gambling. Or perhaps a failed development project he tried to cover up. Whatever it was. It was enough to make a good man desperate, or a weak man dangerous. Gideon must have found out. My father smells weakness like a shark smells blood in the water. He wouldn't have exposed Harrison. No, that is not Gideon's style. He would have bought him. He would have paid off the initial debts, hung the rest over Harrison's head like a guillotine blade, and offered him a way out. The price of the buyout was me. I replay the party last night in my head, dissecting it frame by frame. The reconciliation trip on the Larkhaven, it was Harrison's idea. He pushed for it. Izzy, you and your dad need to bridge this gap before you take over the trust, he had said, his eyes pleading. It will be a fresh start. Just a few days at sea. No phones, no business, just family. Just family. The irony burns in my throat, hotter than the bile. I think about the champagne, the vintage bottle. Gideon made a big show of uncorking it. Celeste was laughing, holding her glass out, already tipsy. But Harrison. My breath catches in the humid air of the engine room. Harrison did not drink. He held a glass. He raised it for every toast. To Isolde, to the future, to family, but he never took a sip. I saw him bring the rim to his lips and then lower it. Untouched. At the time, I thought he was just being responsible. Maybe pacing himself so he could pilot the boat later if the crew took a break. But he wasn't pacing himself. He was waiting, and he was watching my glass. Every time I took a sip, Harrison was there with the bottle. You are drinking too slowly. Love, he chided gently. It is a celebration. He was dosing me. He looked me in the eye, smiled that crooked smile that made me fall in love with him, and handed me a glass full of poison. How much did Gideon pay him? Was it 5,000,010? Or did he just promise to wipe the slate clean? I wonder if Harrison hesitated. I wonder if, when he carried my unconscious body from the deck, he felt a flicker of guilt. Did he kiss my forehead before he dumped me in the cabin and sabotaged the controls? Or did he just look at his watch, calculating how long it would take for the drugs to wear off, hoping the storm would swallow the evidence before I woke up? They did not kill me outright. That is the lawyer in Gideon speaking. Murder leaves a body. Murder involves ballistics, strangulation marks, toxicology reports that are hard to explain, but a disappearance at sea, an accident during a storm that is clean. If I am missing, the clock runs out on my birthday. The voting rights transfer, Gideon secures his empire, Celeste gets her allowance, and Harrison gets to play the widower. He will inherit my personal assets, the non-trust money I saved from my own salary. He will probably write a book about his grief. They built a perfect narrative. The rebellious, workaholic daughter who took a risk on a stormy night, a tragic fall overboard. They accounted for the wind. They accounted for the current. They accounted for the exact dosage of the sedative, but they forgot to account for who I am. They think I am just a signature on a page. They think I am a passive variable in their equation. They forgot that I have spent my entire adult life hunting people who think they are smarter than the system. I stand up. The boat lurches violently, throwing me against the metal workbench. Pain shoots up my shoulder. But I welcome it. It clears the last of the fog. I am not going to die here. I refuse to be a line item in their profit and loss statement. My grandfather left me this legacy because he knew I was the only one strong enough to hold it. He didn't leave it to me because I was nice. He left it to me because I was meticulous. I look around the engine room. I need to stabilize the ship. I need to survive the next 12 hours. And then, I need to get back to land. Not to the police. The local police in our district play golf with Gideon on Sundays. If I show up there, I am a phone call away from being returned to my father's care for mental instability. No. I need to get back to the only jurisdiction that matters. I am going to survive this storm. And when I do, I am not coming back as a daughter. I am coming back as a forensic auditor. I am going to open the books on the Fairmonty family. And I am going to reconcile every single transaction, starting with the price of my own life. The boat groans, a deep, structural sound of metal under stress. The storm is here. I grab a wrench from the wall. It is heavy, cold, and real. Let them prepare the memorial service. Let them pick out the flowers. Let them sign the papers. Because when I walk through those doors, I am going to make sure they lose more than just money. I am going to take their future, just like they tried to steal mine. But first, I have to keep this floating coffin from sinking. I move toward the bilge pumps. It is time to work. The silence in the bridge is not truly silent. It is a vacuum, a hollow space where the hum of electronics and the reassuring beep of navigation aids should be. I stand before the control console of the Larkhaven, gripping the edge until my knuckles turn the color of old bone. The panic that was clawing at my throat moments ago has receded, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. It is the same feeling I get when I look at a financial ledger that has been cooked. The numbers do not lie, and neither does this console. I reach out and touch the ignition switch. The key is gone. That was expected. But it is the jagged plastic around the barrel that tells the real story. Someone did not just take the key. They jammed a screwdriver or a knife into the mechanism and twisted it until the internal tumblers shattered. I look at the circuit breaker panel to my right. It is a high-end marine-grade system, labeled clearly in white font: radar, autopilot, GPS, VHF radio. The toggle switches for every communication and navigation system have been snapped off flush with the panel. I run my finger over the broken plastic nubs. This was not a drunken accident. This was not Harrison panicking. This required force. It required intent. It required pliers. I move to the secondary GPS, a handheld unit usually mounted near the throttle for emergencies. The mount is empty. I look down at the floor. The unit is there, smashed into pieces so small they look like confetti. They did not just want to stop me from calling for help. They wanted to ensure I had no idea where I was. The ocean is big, without coordinates. I am a needle in a haystack, and the haystack is on fire. My body feels impossibly heavy, as if gravity has doubled inside the cabin. The sedative is still in my blood, a chemical anchor dragging me down. My mouth tastes like ash. I need water. I need to think. But mostly, I need to keep moving, because if I stop, the drugs will pull me back under, and I will not wake up a second time. I stumble out of the bridge and into the main salon. It is a wreck of overturned furniture, but I am not looking for comfort. I am looking for the emergency locker. In college, my father forced me to take a maritime safety elective. He claimed it was because we were a shipping family, and I needed to understand the risks our crews faced. I hated it. I spent the entire semester complaining about the grease and the cold. I memorized the manuals just to pass the exam and get back to my accounting textbooks. Now, fragments of that textbook are floating in my mind. The only lifeline I have left. Rule 1. Secure your vessel. Rule 2. Maintain steerage. Rule 3. Do not panic. I find the emergency locker under the bench seat in the galley. It is padlocked. Of course it is. Harrison was thorough. I look around the galley. I see a heavy cast-iron skillet on the floor, likely thrown from the stove when the boat lurched. I pick it up. It weighs about 5 pounds. I do not hesitate. I swing the skillet with every ounce of strength I have remaining. It connects with the brass padlock with a deafening clang that vibrates up my arm and into my teeth. I swing again and again. On the third strike, the hasp gives way. I throw the lid open. The flare gun is gone. The medical kit has been stripped of bandages and painkillers. But they missed the tool roll. I unroll the canvas bundle, a set of wrenches, screwdrivers, a pair of wire cutters, and, thank God, a roll of duct tape. It is not much, but it is better than nothing. The boat lurches violently, throwing me against the galley island. I slide down to the floor, gasping. The motion is different now. It is not the rhythmic rocking of a calm sea. It is a corkscrew motion, a sickening roll that tells me the Larkhaven has turned broadside to the waves. I crawl to the window. The sky is a bruise of purple and black. The whitecaps are not just cresting. They are tearing off the tops of the waves. The wind is howling, a high-pitched shriek that penetrates the glass. We are beamed to the sea. That is the term. If a large enough wave hits us from the side, while we are dead in the water. We will capsize. I need to turn the bow into the wind. I need the engines. I grab the tool roll and force myself to stand. My legs are trembling, not just from the drugs, but from a bone-deep exhaustion. I make my way to the aft deck. The wind hits me like a physical slap, wet and cold. It tears at my torn dress, chilling me to the marrow. I am halfway to the engine room hatch when I hear it. Thump! I freeze. My hand tightens around the handle of a large screwdriver. Thump! Scrape! It sounded like a footstep, a heavy boot dragging across the teak deck. My heart hammers against my ribs. A frantic drumbeat that drowns out the wind. Is someone else here? Did they leave a minder? Did Harrison lose his nerve and stay behind to make sure I actually died? I crouch behind the fiberglass housing of the wet bar. Holding my breath, I listen, straining my ears against the roar of the ocean. Thump, scrape, it is coming from the bow. I creep forward, the screwdriver raised like a dagger. I am not a fighter. I am a woman who spends her days in air-conditioned offices, looking for tax evasion. But in this moment, I am ready to gouge someone's eyes out. I round the corner of the cabin. There is no one there. On the foredeck, a heavy stainless steel fender basket has come loose from its mounting. With every roll of the ship, it slides across the deck, hits the railing, and slides back. Thump, scrape, I let out a breath that is half laugh, half sob. I am alone. The realization is a double-edged sword. I am safe from murderers, but I am entirely alone with the ocean. I turn back and head for the engine room hatch. I lift the heavy latch and heave the door open. The smell hits me instantly. Hot oil, diesel fumes, stagnant air. It is the smell of the beast that powers this luxury. I climb down the ladder, the heat wrapping around me, making my head swim. The engine room is cramped. 2 massive diesel engines dominate the space. Silent and cold, I squeeze between them, moving toward the starboard engine. If I can get one running, I have a chance. I locate the starter solenoid. It is a small cylinder attached to the side of the engine. Normally, the key in the ignition sends an electrical signal here to engage the starter motor. Without the key, the circuit is open. I need to close it. I look at the heavy red cable coming from the battery and the smaller terminal that triggers the solenoid. I can jump it. I have seen it done in movies. I read about it in that textbook. But doing it in a classroom diagram is one thing. Doing it on a heaving boat, with hands that are shaking so bad I can barely hold the screwdriver, is another. I position the screwdriver. The metal shaft needs to touch both the battery terminal and the solenoid terminal at the same time. If I do this wrong, I could weld the screwdriver to the engine. I could shock myself into cardiac arrest. I could cause a spark that ignites the fuel vapors and blows the Larkhaven into the sky. I take a deep breath, inhaling the oily air. Please, I whisper, not to God, not to the universe, but to the machine. Just work. I jam the screwdriver down. Crack. A shower of blue sparks erupts in my face. I flinch, blinding myself for a second, but I keep the pressure on. The starter motor whines a high. Desperate sound. Chunk, chunk, chunk. The engine turns over. Sluggish and heavy. It does not catch. I pull the screwdriver back. The tip is pitted and hot. Come on, I hiss. I wipe the sweat from my eyes with my forearm. My arm is smeared with grease. I look at it. It is the arm of a mechanic, not a Fairmonty. Good. I try again. Sparks. The whine. The heavy rotation of pistons. Roar. The engine catches. A cloud of black smoke coughs out of the exhaust, and the beast wakes up. The vibration travels through the soles of my feet, up my legs, and settles in my chest. It is the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. It sounds like life. I slump against the bulkhead, sliding down until I'm sitting on the metal grating. I am shaking uncontrollably now. The adrenaline is fading, leaving behind the raw terror of what I just did. I sit there for 1 minute, 60 seconds. That is all I allow myself. Then I stand up. I climb back up the ladder, into the wind. I run to the bridge. The controls are still smashed, but the throttles are mechanical. I push the starboard throttle forward. The boat responds. It is sluggish, fighting the sea with only one engine, but it turns. Slowly, agonizingly, the bow swings around. I watch the compass, the analog one mounted on the dashboard that they forgot to smash. North, northeast. I steer the Larkhaven into the oncoming waves. The rolling stops, replaced by a rhythmic pitching. Up, down, up, down. It is violent, but it is controlled. We are no longer drifting. We are driving. I look at the GPS screen. The black spiderweb of cracked glass. It tells me nothing. I do not know where I am. I do not know how far the land is. I do not know if I have enough fuel to make it 5 miles, let alone 50. But I am moving. I grip the wheel with greasy, bleeding hands. I am not going back to beg. I imagine Gideon's face when he gets the call. I imagine Harrison's face when the insurance claim is denied. I am not going back to ask why they did it. I know why. They did it because they assigned a value to my life. And they thought the number was 0. They were wrong. I check the gauges. Oil pressure is holding. Temperature is rising but stable. I will survive this storm. I will survive the ocean. And when I step back onto dry land, I will not be the woman who drank their champagne. I will be the woman who calculates the cost. I steer into the dark wall of the storm, and for the first time in 24 hours, I do not feel fear. I feel like I am finally going to work. The storm is a physical weight now, pressing down on the Larkhaven with a force that feels personal. I am gripping the wheel with hands that have lost all feeling, steering into the troughs of waves that look like moving mountains. The single engine I managed to jumpstart is groaning. A mechanical complaint against the violence of the ocean. I am focused entirely on the rhythm of survival. Climb the wave, crest, slide down. Repeat when I hear it. It is a sound that does not belong to the sea. Thump, thump, thump. It is weak, rhythmic, and coming from inside the boat. My first instinct is that something has broken loose. A fire extinguisher rolling in a cabinet, a loose panel banging against the hull, but the rhythm is too precise. Nature is chaotic. This sound is desperate. I lock the wheel. It is a dangerous gamble, leaving the helm even for a moment in this weather. But if there is someone else on board, someone my husband left behind to ensure I did not wake up, I need to know. I do not have a gun. I do not have a knife. I scan the bridge and spot the emergency flare kit canister. I rip the lid off. The flare gun is gone. Of course, but there is a handheld red distress flare at the bottom, the kind you strike like a match. It is not a weapon, but magnesium burns at 3,000 degrees. If I press it against a face, it will do enough damage to buy me time. I grip the flare in my right hand, my finger hooked through the striker loop. Thump, thump. It is coming from the starboard side, down the short companionway that leads to the crew quarters and the utility storage. I move slowly, using the walls to brace myself as the floor tilts 40 degrees beneath my feet. The hallway is dark, the emergency lights flickering with the strain on the battery. The sound is coming from the tall locker where we store the diving gear and extra linens. It is a heavy door, latched from the outside. I stand before it, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I can hear breathing on the other side. Ragged, wet breathing. "Who is in there?" I shout. My voice sounds thin against the roaring of the wind outside. The knocking stops. A voice, hoarse and broken, filters through the wood. "Let me out. Please. The water is coming in." It is a man's voice. It is not Harrison. It is not Gideon. I grip the flare tighter. "Step back," I command. I undo the latch. It is stiff, corroded by salt air. But I force it open. I kick the door wide and raise the flare, ready to strike. A body tumbles out, spilling onto the carpeted floor like a sack of laundry. It is a young man. He is wearing the navy blue coveralls of the Larkhaven maintenance crew, but they are torn and stained dark with something that looks like oil and dried blood. His hands are zip-tied behind his back. His ankles are bound with duct tape. He rolls onto his side, coughing violently, gasping for air as if he has been holding his breath for hours. I recognize him. Rowan Pike. He is the freelance technician my father hires for the seasonal refits. He fixes the AC units and troubleshoots the electrical systems. He is 24, maybe 25. Quiet, always has grease under his fingernails. He looks up at me. His left eye is swollen shut. A purple lump of bruised flesh. His lip is split. "Miss Fairmonty," he wheezes. "You are alive. I do not lower the flare." I stare at him, my mind racing through the variables. Why is he here? Why is he tied up? Is this a trick? A Trojan horse designed to gain my trust? Why are you here? "Rowan," I ask, my voice cold. He struggles to sit up, wincing as he puts weight on his ribs. "They left me," he says, "just like they left you." "Who, your father? Your husband?" "The tall one, the security chief." I step closer, but I keep the distance of a striking snake. "Untie me," he pleads. "Please." My hands, I cannot feel my fingers. I look at the zip ties. They are cutting deep into his wrists. The skin is white and waxen. I need to know why. I repeat, why did they leave a witness? Rowan looks at me with his one good eye, and I see a flash of genuine fear. Not for himself, but for what he knows. Because I saw the envelope. He says, "The air in the hallway seems to drop 10 degrees. What envelope? I was in the ventilation shaft, fixing the AC for the main salon. The fan was loud. They did not hear me. I saw your father. He gave a thick manila envelope to your husband. Harrison looked sick. He did not want to take it. But your father said, 'It is done. The debt is cleared. Just make sure she drinks it.'" My stomach twists. Hearing it is different from suspecting it. Suspecting it is a hypothesis. Hearing it is a verdict. I lower the flare, but only slightly. "Go on. Then you drank the champagne," Rowan continues, his voice gaining a little strength. "You fell. Your sister Celeste." She started laughing. It was not a nervous laugh. She laughed like she had just won a prize. She said, "God, she is heavy. Do not scratch the floor when you drag her." I close my eyes for a second. That sounds exactly like Celeste. Worried about the teak, not the sister. I tried to come out. Rowan says, "I shouted. I told them to stop. That was my mistake." He gestures with his head to his bound hands. "The big guy, the security one, he grabbed me. Put me in a chokehold. I heard your father say, 'We need it clean. No loose ends. Throw him over the side with the dinghy. Make it look like he slipped while prepping the launch.'" "So how are you here?" I ask. "I fought back," Rowan says. "I kicked the railing. I think I broke the security guy's nose. He got mad. He hit me with a wrench. Knocked me out. I guess they decided throwing a body overboard in the harbor was too risky. Or maybe they just got lazy. They shoved me in here. They probably thought the storm would finish the job. It is a plausible story. It fits Gideon's pattern arrogance leading to sloppiness. He assumes people like Rowan, people who work with their hands, are irrelevant. He assumes they are easily disposed of. I kneel down, turn around. I say, Rowan turns his back to me. I do not have a knife, so I use the metal striker of the flare cap to saw at the duct tape on his ankles. It takes time. The tape is thick, industrial grade. When it finally snaps, Rowan lets out a hiss of relief. "I cannot cut the zip ties on your wrists." I say, "I need the wire cutters from the galley." "Can you walk? I can crawl," he says. I help him up. He is heavier than he looks, dense with muscle, but he is weak. We stumble back to the galley. The boat pitches, throwing us against the cabinets. I find the wire cutters in the tool roll I salvaged earlier. I snip the plastic ties. Rowan's hands fall to his sides. He rubs his wrists, grimacing as the blood rushes back into the crushed nerves. "Thank you," he whispers. "Do not thank me yet," I say. Tossing the cutters onto the counter, we have one engine, no radio, no GPS, and we are steering into a Category 3 storm. Rowan looks at the window, at the black chaos outside. He nods, as if this is just another mechanical problem to solve. "I can help with the engine," he says. "I know this boat. The starboard fuel filter is finicky. If it clogs, we lose the last engine. I can bypass it." Good, I say. But before you do that, you said you saw them. Yes. That is your word against theirs. Rowan, my father has lawyers who cost more per hour than you make in a year. They will say you are a disgruntled employee. They will say you stole the boat and kidnapped me. Rowan reaches down to his right boot. He fumbles with the heel. His fingers still clumsy. He peels back the rubber sole that has been sliced open and resealed with black gum. He pulls out a tiny rectangular object. It is a micro SD card. Your father is paranoid, Rowan says. He had me install hidden cameras in the salon and the aft deck 3 months ago. He said he wanted to monitor the crew for theft. He made me tape over the recording lights so no one would know. I stare at the chip in his palm. It is smaller than a fingernail, yet it weighs more than the entire ship. Is it on there, I ask? Everything, Rowan says. The envelope, the drink, the conversation, the way they laughed. I pulled the card from the server room before I climbed into the vent. I was going to use it to blackmail your father for my back pay. I did not know they were going to kill you. I take the card. It feels cold. This is not just blackmail material. Rowan, this is a life sentence. I wrap the card in a scrap of plastic from a sandwich bag I found in the drawer and tuck it into the safest place I have, the inside pocket of my bra. Right against my skin. I look at Rowan. He is battered, dehydrated, and terrified. I have a choice to make. The rational, forensic part of my brain, the part trained by Blackstone Ledger, runs the numbers. Water supply. I have found 6 bottles of water, not enough for 2 people for more than 3 days. Food, a box of stale crackers and some canned tuna. Oxygen plenty, liability high. He is injured. He will slow me down. If we have to abandon ship, he is dead weight. But the asset value, he is a witness, a living, breathing corroborator to the digital evidence. Without him, the video could be claimed as a deepfake technology is good enough these days that Gideon could argue it. But with Rowan testifying to the chain of custody, testifying to the smell of the room and the sound of their voices, it is bulletproof. I hand him a bottle of water. Drink half. I command. Save the rest. He drinks greedily, water spilling down his chin. He wipes it away with a trembling hand. Why, he asks, looking at me. Why help me? You could have left me in the locker. Save the water for yourself. I look him in the eye. I do not smile. There is no warmth in me right now. I am not saving you because I am kind. Rowan, I am saving you because you are evidence. You are Exhibit A. He laughs, a dry hacking sound. You are definitely a Fairmonty. I am not a Fairmonty. I correct him. I am the auditor, and we are going to audit them. The boat shudders, a massive vibration that rattles the teeth in my skull. The engine pitch changes. It is sputtering. The filter, Rowan says, his eyes widening. Go, I say. Fix it. He scrambles toward the engine room hatch, moving with a surprising agility for a man who was tied up 10 minutes ago. I return to the bridge. The waves are higher now. Towering over the bow, I wrestle the wheel, my arms burning. Rowan comes back up 10 minutes later, grease smeared across his cheek. It is bypassed. He yells over the roar of the storm. It will run rich, burn more fuel, but it won't stall. Good work, I say. He stands beside me, gripping the console. He looks at the smashed GPS, the broken radio. We are going to die. Aren't we? He asks. It is not a complaint, just a question. No, I say, we are not going to die. Because if we die, they win. And I am not in the habit of letting people steal from me. Rowan looks at the storm, then back at me. If we make it back, he says quietly, do not go to the police. I know. I say, local police are compromised. No, that is not what I mean. Rowan says. He leans in, his voice dropping. I mean, if you go back, and they find out you are alive before you are ready to strike, they will not make a mistake the second time. He points to his bruised face. Your father looked at me while the security guard was choking me. He did not look angry. He looked bored. He said, It is a shame. Good mechanics are hard to find. Rowan shivers. These people, they do not have souls. Miss Fairmonty, they have calculators where their hearts should be. If you go back, you have to be a ghost, because if you are flesh and blood, they will bleed you. I look at the dark ocean. I am already a ghost. Rowan, I say, and it is true. The Isolde who boarded this ship, the woman who wanted her father's approval and her husband's love, died yesterday. The woman steering the ship now is something else entirely. I check the compass. Keep the bow 40 degrees to the swell. I instruct him. I need to check the charts. Rowan takes the wheel. His hands are steady now. We are a team, not friends. Not family, but co-conspirators in survival. And that bond, forged in salt and betrayal, is stronger than any wedding ring I ever wore. The engine of the Larkhaven finally gave up the ghost 3 miles off the coast of a town that looked like a smudge of charcoal against the dawn sky. It did not matter. The storm had spat us out, battered and leaking, into the calm waters of a bay I did not recognize. We drifted the last mile, pushed by a favorable tide, until the hull scraped against the tires of a rotting wooden pier. It was not a marina. It was a graveyard for fishing boats that had seen better decades. The air smelled of dead crab and diesel, a stark contrast to the lavender and sea salt scent of the private dock my family owned in the Hamptons. Rowan was the first to jump off. He tied the stern line to a rusted cleat, his movements stiff and painful. I followed him. As my feet hit the solid wood of the dock, I expected to feel relief. I expected to fall to my knees and kiss the ground. Instead, I felt a wave of nausea. The ground felt wrong. It was too stable. My body was still calibrated to the violent pitch and roll of the ocean. And the stillness felt like a lie. "We need to find a police station," Rowan said, wiping grease from his forehead with the back of his hand. He looked like a specter, one eye swollen shut, his clothes shredded, shivering in the early morning chill. "No," I said. My voice was raspy, stripped raw by the salt air. "No police." He turned to me, incredulous. "Miss Fairmonty, they tried to kill us. We need protection. We need leverage." I corrected him. "Listen to me. Rowan, my father, Gideon Fairmonty, sits on the board of the Police Benevolent Association in 3 states. He donates $200,000 a year to the State Troopers' Pension Fund. If we walk into a local precinct looking like this, claiming the Fairmonty patriarch tried to murder us, one of 2 things will happen. 1, they will think we are crazy junkies and lock us up until Gideon sends a lawyer to collect us. Or 2, the chief will make a courtesy call to my father to ask what to do." I looked him dead in the eye. "Do you want to be there when Gideon answers that call?" Rowan went pale. He shook his head. "We need to disappear." I said, "We need to be dead for 48 more hours." We walked into the town. It was one of those coastal places that shuts down after Labor Day. Full of boarded-up ice cream shops and souvenir stores with sun-faded window displays. I felt exposed with every step. I was still wearing the ruins of my evening gown, now ripped at the knee and stained with engine oil. I had thrown a technician's jacket I found in the crew quarters over my shoulders, but I still looked like a disaster. We found a 24-hour convenience store near the highway. I told Rowan to wait outside. I could not risk him being seen on a security camera yet. I went into the bathroom first. I locked the door and reached into the hidden lining of the travel tote I had managed to drag off the boat. My fingers brushed against the cold plastic of a credit card. It was a black card from a bank that did not have a branch in my home state. I had opened this account 5 years ago, right before I married Harrison. I had told myself it was for emergencies, a lost passport, a medical evacuation. But deep down, I think I knew. I think a part of me, the auditor part, knew that trusting Harrison was a high-risk venture, and I needed a hedge position. I had never used it. The balance was sitting there, untouched, accumulated from my bonuses at Blackstone Ledger, $50,000 of freedom. I walked out to the counter and bought prepaid burner phones, a cheap laptop, a change of clothes that consisted of oversized tourist sweatshirts and sweatpants, and every energy bar on the shelf. The clerk, a teenager with headphones around his neck, barely looked at me. He just scanned the items, took the card, and handed me the receipt. To him. I was just another ragged tourist who had partied too hard. To the system. I was a ghost using a card that did not trace back to the Fairmonty estate. We checked into a motel 3 miles down the road. The sign buzzed with a dying neon letter. The O burned out. Reading Blue Heron M. Tor Inn. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner. The carpet was sticky. It was the most beautiful room I had ever seen because it had a deadbolt on the door. I sent Rowan to the shower first. When he came out, steam rolling off him, he looked younger, more vulnerable. The grease was gone, but the bruises were darker, stark purple maps of violence on his skin. My turn, I said. I stood under the water for 20 minutes. I scrubbed my skin until it was red, trying to wash away the feeling of the salt. It felt like the ocean had seeped into my pores, like I was curing from the inside out. But no matter how hard I scrubbed, I could still feel Harrison's hand on my back. I could still taste the metallic champagne. I stepped out, dried off with a towel that felt like sandpaper, and put on the gray sweatpants I had bought. I sat down at the small, scarred table where Rowan had set up the laptop. He had the micro SD card in his hand. "Are you sure you want to see this?" he asked. His voice was quiet. "Put it in," I said. He slid the card into the adapter and plugged it into the USB port. A folder popped up on the screen, dozens of files. He clicked on the one dated 2 days ago, timestamp 11:45 at night. The video quality was grainy, a fisheye view from the hidden camera in the salon ceiling, but the audio was crystal clear. I saw myself first. I was slumped on the white leather sofa, my head lolling back. I looked like a broken doll. Then Harrison walked into the frame. He was not frantic. He was not crying. He was checking his phone. He typed a message, hit send, and then looked down at me. He reached out and touched my cheek, on the screen. For a second, I thought I saw regret, but then he spoke. "She is out," he said. Celeste walked into the frame holding a glass of wine. She looked at me with an expression of mild distaste. Finally, she said, "God, she was boring tonight. Did you hear her talking about the bond yields? I thought I was going to jump overboard myself just to escape the conversation." She took a sip of wine. "Is it done?" Gideon walked in. He was wearing his captain's hat, the one he wore ironically, but also with a terrifying seriousness. "The current is moving south-southeast," Gideon said. He did not look at me. He was looking at a chart on the table. "We drop her in 20 minutes. The storm front will cover the drift. By the time anyone finds the wreckage, there won't be enough left to autopsy." He is talking about his daughter. I thought, he is talking about me like I am a crate of spoiled cargo that needs to be jettisoned to save the insurance premium. Harrison bent down and scooped me up. I saw his face strain. "Careful," Celeste said sharply. "Do not drag her heels. That carpet is silk." Harrison adjusted his grip. He looked at Gideon. "Are we sure about the technician, Pike?" "He is a loose end," Gideon said, not looking up. "Clean it up." Harrison nodded. He carried me toward the sliding glass doors. Rowan paused the video. The room was silent. The only sound was the humming of the motel's refrigerator and the rain starting to tap against the window. Rowan was looking at me, waiting. I think he expected me to scream. He expected me to throw the laptop against the wall, to break down in hysterics, to mourn the family I had just lost. But I did not feel grief. Grief is what you feel when you lose something valuable. I had not lost a family. I had simply discovered that the family I thought I had was a fraudulent construct. I was an auditor. I had just found the discrepancy in the books. You do not cry over a discrepancy. You correct it. I stared at the frozen image of Harrison carrying me. "Play it again," I said, "Miss Fairmonty." Rowan started. "Play it again," I repeated. "I want to see the timestamp on the phone Harrison is holding." Rowan clicked play. I watched it. I watched it 3 times. I memorized every word, every gesture, every second of their betrayal. I let it burn into my brain, cauterizing the wound where my love for them used to be. "That is enough," I said finally. I opened the burner phone I had bought. My hands were perfectly steady. "Who are you calling?" Rowan asked. "The FBI, no." I said, "The FBI moves too slow. They need probable cause, warrants, bureaucracy. By the time they move, Gideon will have shredded everything. I am calling the only person my father fears." I dialed a number I had memorized from a law journal. "I read 2 years ago." It rang 4 times. Mara Klein. A voice answered, sharp, impatient. It was 2 in the morning. She sounded like she was in the middle of a deposition. "Mara, this is Isolde Fairmonty," I said. There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. "Isolde Fairmonty is dead," Mara said. Her voice had changed. It was no longer impatient. It was guarded. "I am watching the news right now. Your father just issued a statement. They found debris. They are calling off the search. They found what they were meant to find." I said, "I am not dead, Mara, but I need to stay that way for a few more days. Where are you safe?" "I have evidence, Mara. I have a witness, and I have a video of my father, my sister, and my husband conspiring to murder me to trigger the inheritance clause of my grandfather's trust." I heard the sound of a pen scratching on paper. "What do you want?" Isolde Mara asked. "Do you want a settlement? Do you want to sue for damages?" "No." I said, "I do not want a civil suit. I do not want money. I have plenty of money." "Then what I want? A RICO case," I said. "I want federal indictments. I want asset forfeiture. I want them to lose the company, the houses, the boats, and their freedom. I want to hire you as a special prosecutor to build the package for the Department of Justice." There was a pause. Then, for the first time, I heard a hint of excitement in Mara's voice. "That is a tall order. Isolde, the Fairmonty family has judges in their pocket." "I know." I said, "That is why I am calling you. You hate them. You lost a case against Gideon 10 years ago because he bribed a witness. I remember reading about it. I'm giving you a second shot." I looked at Rowan. He was watching me with a mix of fear and awe. "I have the files. Mara," I continued, "I have the proof, but I need you to prepare the trap. They are going to file for the death certificate tomorrow. They need it to unlock the trust before my birthday expires. Let them," Mara said. It was a whisper, but it was sharp as a razor. "Let them file. Let them sign the affidavit. That is perjury. That is fraud." "Exactly," I said. "I will send you the digital files via an encrypted Dropbox in 10 minutes. Do not tell anyone I am alive. Not the police, not the press. I understand." Mara said, "When do you want to surface at the memorial?" I said. There was a beat of silence, and then a low chuckle from the other end of the line. "You are cold." "Isolde." I looked at the screen, at the image of my husband carrying my body like trash. "No, Mara," I said, "I am not cold. I am just balanced." I hung up the phone. Rowan was staring at me. "You are not going to just send them to jail, are you?" he asked. I stood up and walked to the window, peering through the blinds at the wet parking lot. "Jail is for criminals. Rowan," I said softly, "my family thinks they are royalty. If I just send them to jail, they will think they are martyrs. They will think they were unlucky." I turned back to him. "I am going to destroy their reputation first. I am going to let them stand in front of the world and claim they loved me. I am going to let them act out their perfect little tragedy. And then, when they think they have won, when they think the money is safe in their accounts, I am going to walk in and burn their world to the ground." I touched the screen of the laptop, tapping Gideon's face. "If they want me dead for money, then I will make them live to pay it back. Every single cent." The cheap laptop hummed on the scarred laminate table of the Blue Heron Motor Inn, a sound that felt loud in the stillness of the room. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the world wet and gray. But inside this room, the atmosphere was electric. Rowan was asleep on the lumpy twin bed, his breathing ragged but steady. I was awake. I had been awake for 20 hours, fueled by adrenaline and cheap vending machine coffee. I was not just surfing the web, I was dissecting a corpse, using the burner laptop and a secure VPN that routed my IP address through a server in Zurich. I accessed the back door of the Fairmonty coastal freight server. It was a vulnerability I had identified 3 years ago during a casual audit a port left open for remote maintenance that the IT department never bothered to close because Gideon deemed the cybersecurity budget excessive. I was looking for the why. I knew they wanted the trust fund. That was $80 million of liquidity, but murder is a high-risk transaction. Usually, people only resort to it when the alternative is total collapse. If Gideon just wanted more money to expand, he would have pressured me, bullied me, or sued me. To kill me meant he needed the money yesterday. I pulled up the consolidated balance sheets for the last 4 quarters. On the surface, everything looked fine. Revenue was steady. Operating costs were within the standard deviation. But I am a forensic accountant. I do not look at the surface. I look at the footnotes. I found it in the accounts receivable ledger. There were repeated payments to a company called Titan Logistics. It was listed as a subcontractor for specialized hauling. The amounts were staggering. $500,000 here, $1.2 million there, all paid out within 48 hours of invoicing. I ran a background check on Titan Logistics. It was a shell. No website, no physical office, just a P.O. box in Delaware, and a registered agent who was a known fixer for offshore banking. I dug deeper, cross-referencing the invoice dates with Fairmonty's shipping manifests. Every time a payment went to Titan, a container vanished from the system. Not physically the physical container arrived at its destination, but the record of its contents was scrubbed and replaced with generic labels like agricultural machinery or textiles. Gideon was not just skimming off the top, he was smuggling. But that was not the smoking gun. Smuggling makes money. It does not lose it. So where was the cash going? I traced the Titan payments. They were not staying in Delaware. They were bouncing through a series of intermediaries and landing in a private equity debt fund in New York. A fund known for high-risk, high-interest lending to distressed companies. I sat back, the cheap plastic chair creaking under me. Gideon was broke. The empire was a hologram. He had leveraged the company to the hilt to pay for bad investments, likely the failed port expansion in Charleston 2 years ago that he swore was a visionary move. He had borrowed money from dangerous people, using the company's stock as collateral. But he did not own the controlling stock. I did. The debt covenants were about to trigger. I looked at the date on the latest demand letter I found buried in his encrypted email outbox. Payment in full required by... My eyes widened. The date was tomorrow, my 30th birthday. If he did not pay $40 million by tomorrow, the lenders would seize the collateral. They would take the company. Gideon would be destitute. He would be exposed as a fraud. He did not kill me for greed. He killed me for survival. He needed my death to unlock the trust fund instantly, so he could liquidate it and plug the hole before the lenders swallowed him whole. I felt a tap on my shoulder. I jumped, my hand instinctively going to the flare I still kept on the table. It was Rowan. He was awake, looking at the screen over my shoulder. "You found something?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep. "I found everything," I said. "My father is not a tycoon. Rowan. He is a gambler who lost the house and is trying to burn it down to claim the insurance." Rowan pulled up a chair. He pointed to a file on the screen. A shipping manifest for a container labeled FCF 909. "I know that number," he said. "What on the boat?" Rowan said. "Before they found me, I heard Gideon on the phone. He was on speaker. He was shouting at someone at the Port Authority. He mentioned container 909. "What did he say?" I asked. Leaning in, he said, "The goods are stuck in customs. I cannot move them without the trustee's signature." I froze. The trustee. That was me. He was yelling that he needed a release form. Rowan continued. He said, "She is the bottleneck. Once she is gone, I become the acting trustee. I will sign the release myself." The pieces clicked together with the precision of a bear trap snapping shut. It was not just the debt, it was the contraband. Gideon had a shipment likely illegal, high-value cargo stuck at the port. He needed to move it to pay off the lenders, but because the trust technically owned the subsidiary importing it, the customs release required the signature of the primary beneficiary, me. He could not ask me to sign it because I would have read the manifest, I would have audited the contents, I would have seen the smuggling. So he had to remove the auditor. I turned back to the laptop. My fingers flew across the keyboard. If they want a signature, I whispered, I will give them a signature. I logged into the trust's legal portal. As the current beneficiary, I had the power to issue administrative orders. Gideon thought he had blocked me out by destroying my phone and laptop, but he forgot that authentication codes can be generated if you know the recovery keys. And I memorized my recovery keys. I drafted a document. It was a conditional power of attorney and asset freeze. It stated that in the event of my death or disappearance, all assets of the Fairmonte Trust were to be immediately frozen pending a full federal audit. It also appointed an independent third-party custodian, a strict, by-the-book firm in DRC, to oversee the freeze. I signed it digitally. Then, I set a timer. I contacted Mara Klein's office through the encrypted channel we had established. I uploaded the entire packet, the Titan Logistics invoices, the debt demand letters, the shipping manifests for container 909, and Rowan's affidavit, which we had recorded an hour ago. Mara. I typed into the chat window, "Do not file this yet." Why her reply came back instantly, "This is enough to bury him, because I want him to think he has won." I typed, "If we arrest him now, he claims incompetence. He claims it was a mistake. I want to catch him in the act of claiming the money. I want you to prepare a package." I continued, "A physical package." I described what I needed. It was theatrical. Yes, but these people lived their lives on a stage. They responded to symbols. I want a wooden chest. I wrote, cherry wood, expensive. Engrave the word legacy on the lid, and inside, put the hard drives with the evidence. I typed, put a copy of the frozen asset order, and put a single key. What key? The key to safe deposit box 404 at the First National Bank. I replied, "What is in the box?" "Nothing." I wrote, "But Gideon does not know that. He will think it is the codes to the offshore accounts he has been trying to access. He will think I left him a way out. He will open that chest in front of everyone because his ego won't let him believe I would double-cross him from the grave. Send it to the mansion." I instructed, "Mark it as a condolence gift from a friend of the family. Time the delivery for the middle of the memorial service." Understood. Mara replied, "It will be there." I closed the chat window. The trap was set. The legal wall was built. When Gideon tried to access the trust funds tomorrow, he would hit a blockade of federal scrutiny, and when he opened that box, he would realize that his accident had been audited. I had one last thing to check. I opened a new tab. I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the login button for the National Insurance Database. This was personal. The trust was business. This was my marriage. I logged in using my Social Security number. I navigated to my life insurance policy. It was a standard policy, $10 million, taken out when I turned 25. I clicked on Beneficiary History. My breath hitched. The primary beneficiary had been my estate, with the funds to be distributed according to my will, but there was a change log. Date of change: October 14th, 2025. That was 3 months ago. New primary beneficiary Harrison Colebrook, relationship husband, allocation 100%. I stared at the screen. October 14th. I remembered that day. It was our anniversary. Harrison had taken me to dinner. He had given me a diamond bracelet. He had told me he wanted to renew our vows. He had been so tender, so attentive. While he was holding my hand across the candlelight, the paperwork to profit from my death was already processing in the system. He had not just been coerced by Gideon. He had not just been a weak man caught in a bad debt. He had planned this. I scrolled down. There was a scanned PDF of the change form. It required my signature to authorize the change. I opened the PDF. There, at the bottom, was my name, Isolde Fairmonte. It was a perfect signature, The loop of the I, the sharp cross of the T. It was flawless. But it was a forgery. I knew it was a forgery because of one tiny, invisible detail. When I sign official documents, I always put a microscopic dot inside the loop of the Y. It is a habit I picked up from my grandfather, a way to spot fake checks. There was no dot. Harrison had practiced. He had spent hours, maybe weeks, learning to be me so he could erase me. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was hot and angry. I wiped it away before it could reach my chin. Rowan was watching me. He saw the name on the screen. He changed it, Rowan asked softly. Yes, I said. He bet against me. $10 million. The glow of the laptop screen was the only light in the motel room, casting long, shivering shadows against the peeling wallpaper. Outside, the rain had returned, a relentless drumming that matched the pounding in my head. I was staring at a PDF document, zoomed in to 400%. I had already seen the forged signature. Now I was past the ink. I was hunting the data buried underneath it, the metadata embedded in the digital signature file. Timestamp, October 14th, 2025, 2:33 in the afternoon. I closed my eyes, forcing my memory to rewind 3 months. October 14th, our anniversary. At 2:33 in the afternoon, I was in a meeting with a client in Midtown. Harrison knew that. He knew my schedule better than I did. He often joked that he was my personal secretary, but at 2:33 in the afternoon, Harrison was not at his architecture firm. I opened a separate window, accessing the archived bank statements of our joint checking account. I scrolled back to October. On October 15th, one day after the beneficiary change was signed, a wire transfer of $200,000 was made from our account to a creditor called Vantage Holdings. I remembered that day vividly. Harrison had come home with a bottle of wine, not the poisoned champagne, but a deep, rich Merlot. He had been crying. He told me that his bad investment in the commercial zoning project had finally turned a corner. He said the developers had bought him out. He said, "I paid it off. Izzy, the debt is gone. We are free." I had hugged him. I had felt the tension leave his shoulders. I thought I was holding a man who was relieved to have saved his family's future. I was holding a man who had just sold his wife to pay a gambling debt. The $200,000 did not come from a buyout. It came from a loan shark who was willing to extend credit because Harrison had just shown him proof of collateral, a $10 million insurance policy on a wife who would not live to see 31. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to lean over and put my head between my knees. It was not just the murder, it was the intimacy of the betrayal. He had used our anniversary, a celebration of our union, as the administrative deadline for my execution. Harrison, I whispered to the empty room, was it just the money or did you hate me too? A soft chime from the laptop broke the silence. I sat up. It was a notification from my cloud account. My primary phone was at the bottom of the Atlantic, crushed and dead, but my digital life was synced to the cloud. New message from Harrison Hubby. I stared at the name. Hubby, a contact name I had saved 5 years ago with a heart emoji next to it. I clicked open the message interface. Isolde God, please answer me. The Coast Guard is saying they found debris. Tell me you are not on the boat. Tell me you took the dinghy. Please, baby, just text me back. I'm going out of my mind. It was a masterpiece. If I were a juror reading this transcript 6 months from now, I would see a frantic, devastated husband grasping for hope. I would see a man in denial, but I was not a juror. I was the victim reading her own eulogy. He sent this message knowing I could never read it. He typed, "Please, baby," while likely sitting in a room with Gideon. Planning the press conference, it was a paper trail. He was manufacturing evidence of his innocence in real time. A hand touched my shoulder. Rowan was standing behind me, looking at the screen. He read the text message. "He is sick," Rowan said. His voice was flat, stripped of shock. He has seen too much in the last 24 hours to be shocked anymore. "He is smart," I corrected. "He knows the police will subpoena his phone records. This text is his alibi. Rowan pointed at the screen. You should reply. No, just one word. Rowan urged. Scare him. Make him panic. Tell him you know. And then what I asked. Turning to face him, he panics. He calls Gideon. They destroy the physical evidence. They claim my phone was stolen. They claim I'm having a mental breakdown. No, Rowan. I turned back to the screen. Silence is louder. I said, if I do not answer. He has to wonder, did the phone sync? Or do I have it? I typed a message to Mara Klein. My attorney. Do not file the RICO papers yet. I need one more link. I need to know who Harrison is reporting to when Gideon is not in the room. Mara's reply came 3 minutes later. We have a tap on the landline at the Fairmonty estate. Gideon is old school. He trusts copper wires more than satellites. But Harrison is using a burner. We cannot trace him unless he makes a mistake. Then we make him make a mistake. I typed, I need a rumor. Mara. What kind of rumor? Plant a story in the financial gossip columns. Something specific. Say that the Fairmonty Trust transfer is being flagged for a compliance review due to an anonymous tip about the beneficiary's status. Say the bank is considering freezing the assets for 6 months. That will make them desperate. Mara wrote, if the money is frozen, Gideon defaults on his loans by Friday. Exactly. I replied. Panic makes people sloppy. I closed the chat. Now we wait. I told Rowan, we waited for 4 hours. The rain stopped, and the sun began to rise, a pale, watery light that made the motel room look even grimmer. We ate stale granola bars and drank lukewarm water. At 8 a.m, the notification came. Not a text, a file transfer from Mara. Subject intercepted call, 07:55 a.m. I plugged in the cheap earbuds I had bought at the gas station and handed one to Rowan. We sat side by side, heads bowed like two people praying, and pressed play. The recording started with the sound of a dial tone, then a click. Hello? It was Celeste's voice. She sounded groggy, annoyed. Did you see it? Harrison's voice? He sounded like he was hyperventilating. The report on the Ledger Daily. They are talking about a freeze. Calm down. Harrison? Celeste snapped. It is just rumors. Dad said everything is under control. Your dad says a lot of things, Harrison yelled. His voice cracked. If they freeze the trust, the insurance investigation pauses too. I cannot wait 6 months. Celeste, the people I owe, they do not do payment plans. Stop whining, Celeste said. Her voice was cold, dismissive. You are embarrassing yourself. I am the one who carried her. Harrison hissed. I am the one who watched her eyes roll back. You just stood there drinking your wine. I did my part, Celeste said. I got you into the family. Didn't I? I introduced you to the little mouse. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I played the loving sister. Celeste continued. And you played the knight in shining armor. We cast the play perfectly. Do not ruin the ending just because you are scared of the dark. I am not scared, Harrison said, dropping his voice. I see her face. Forget her face, Celeste said. Think about the 10 million. Think about the island in the Grenadines. I just need it to be over, Harrison said. I just need to get past her birthday. Then it is clean. It will be clean, Celeste said, her voice softening, becoming almost affectionate in a twisted, sickening way. You are the savior. Hutch, you always have been, ever since we were kids. I hit pause. The room was silent, save for the blood rushing in my ears. Hutch, I looked at Rowan. Did you hear that? He nodded. She called him Hutch. Is that a nickname? I stared at the wall. Harrison's middle name is James. His friends call him Harry. I have never heard anyone call him Hutch, but I knew the name. It was a memory from a long time ago. I was 12. Celeste was 16. She had been sent away to a summer camp in Vermont, a leadership retreat that was really a holding pen for rich, troubled teenagers. When she came back, she talked about a boy named Hutch who had helped her sneak out to buy cigarettes, a boy she had been obsessed with for a summer. I had forgotten about it, It was just one of Celeste's endless dramas. But Harrison had told me he grew up in Ohio. He told me he went to public school. He told me he met Celeste for the first time at the charity gala where he met me. He lied. They knew each other. They had known each other for 15 years. I felt the pieces of the puzzle rearrange themselves into a picture that was even darker than I had imagined. This was not just a husband compromised by debt. This was not just a father sacrificing a daughter. This was a long con. Harrison did not fall in love with me. He was planted. Celeste brought him in. She knew I was the heir. She knew I was the barrier to the fortune. So she went out and found her old friend Hutch, a man with charm, ambition, and a flexible moral compass, and she wrote a script for him. Target the sister, marry her, gain her trust, and when the time is right, remove her. The debts Harrison had, maybe they were real, or maybe they were just part of the pressure campaign to justify the murder to Gideon. I replayed the line in my head. You are the savior. Hutch, he wasn't saving me, he was saving them from poverty, saving them from irrelevance. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. The heartbreak was gone, the shock was gone. In their place was a cold, hard diamond of realization. I had spent my marriage worrying that I wasn't enough for Harrison, that I was too boring, too analytical, too plain compared to my glittering sister. But he didn't pick me because I was lacking. He picked me because I was the mark. I took the earbud out of my ear. We have it. I said to Rowan, we have what? The motive, I said, and the connection. Celeste and Harrison are not just co-conspirators. They are partners. This goes back years. I looked at the laptop screen, at the waveform of their voices. Harrison thinks he is waiting for a check. I said, he thinks he is waiting for the insurance company to deposit $10 million into his account. I stood up and walked to the small bathroom sink. I splashed cold water on my face. When I looked in the mirror, the woman staring back at me looked different. Her eyes were harder. Her mouth was set in a line that suggested zero tolerance for error. He is right, I said to my reflection. He is waiting for a payout. I dried my face. But he is going to be very disappointed with the currency. I walked back to the table. Pack the bags. Rowan, I said, we are leaving, yes. We have a memorial to attend. I picked up the burner phone. I sent one final text to Mara. The package is ready. The key is in the box. And Mara add a new defendant to the RICO draft, Harrison Colebrook, alias Hutch. Charge conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and marriage fraud. I looked at the rain stopping outside. The storm was over. Now came the flood. I am coming home. Harrison, I whispered, and I am bringing the past with me. The rain had stopped, but the humidity in the motel room was stifling. It felt like the inside of a lung. I sat at the table, my eyes burning from the glare of the screen, scrolling through years of financial data that I had pulled from the Fairmonty server before I was locked out. Rowan was pacing the small strip of carpet between the beds, eating dry cereal from a box. He looked like a caged animal, but I was the one hunting. I had moved past the immediate betrayal of my husband and sister. That was emotional debris. Now, I was looking at the structural rot of the company itself. I was looking at the consulting fees. In forensic accounting, consulting is often a euphemism for, we cannot tell you what this money bought because it would send us to prison. I found a recurring payment to a firm called Apex Solutions. The amounts were not large enough to trigger an automatic federal audit, $9,000 here, $12,000 there, but the volume was staggering. Over the last 3 years, Fairmonty Coastal Freight had paid out nearly $4 million to this entity. I cross-referenced the payment dates with our shipping schedules. Every time a payment was made to Apex, a specific event occurred at the Port of Newark or the Port of Charleston. A container was flagged for expedited clearance. I looked up at Rowan. Rowan, I said, I need you to think back to the warehouse floor, not the office, the floor. He stopped pacing. What am I looking for? I turned the laptop so he could see the spreadsheet. These payments matched the arrival of containers from a subsidiary in Southeast Asia, but the manifests list the cargo as textile scraps or recycled plastic. Low value, high volume. Why would my father pay $4 million to expedite trash? Rowan frowned. He came closer, squinting at the screen. He pointed to a column labeled Container ID. I know this prefix, he said. FCF-X. What does it mean? It stands for external, Rowan said. But the guys on the dock, they call them the ghost boxes. Ghost boxes? Yeah. Rowan rubbed the back of his neck. It was a joke among the crew. Whenever an X-series container came in, the shift manager would clear the floor. Mandatory break. Everyone had to go to the canteen for 20 minutes. By the time we came back, the container was gone, not stacked, just gone, loaded onto a truck and driven off before it was even scanned into the inventory system. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the motel's air conditioning. They were bypassing the internal scan. I said, "And the custom scan?" Rowan asked. I tapped the screen. That is what the consulting fees are for. Bribes. Gideon is paying someone at the port to look the other way while he moves cargo that never officially enters the country. I sat back, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. This was not just about the trust fund. If I took control of the company tomorrow, the first thing I would do as the new trustee is audit the inventory system. I would see the gaps. I would see the ghost boxes. I would see the payments to Apex. I would have found the smuggling ring within a week. Gideon did not kill me just because he needed the cash to pay his debts. He killed me because I am the only person on Earth with the clearance to see the data and the training to understand what it means. I was not just a daughter to him. I was a walking indictment. Isolde, Rowan asked. You look pale. I am fine, I said, my voice hard. I just realized that my family is not just morally bankrupt. They are a criminal enterprise. I went back to the keyboard. I needed to know who else was involved. Gideon is arrogant, but he is not tech-savvy. He can barely convert a Word document to a PDF. Someone had to be scrubbing the digital logs to hide these ghost boxes from the quarterly reports. I accessed the system administrator logs. I used a backdoor entry I had created years ago to monitor my own team's productivity. I filtered by user ID. I saw my own name. Fairmonty. According to the logs, I had logged in 3 days ago at 4 a.m. I had authorized the deletion of 3 shipping manifests. I stared at the screen. 3 days ago at 4 a.m, I was asleep in my bed in Connecticut. Someone was using my credentials. I checked the IP address of the login. It originated from inside the Fairmonty headquarters. Rowan. I said, who runs IT at the main office? A guy named Sterling. Rowan said, nervous guy. Sweats a lot. Sterling. I knew him. He was a mid-level manager who always seemed terrified of Gideon. But he did not have the authority to override a trustee account. I dug deeper into the metadata of the login. The user did not just use my password, they used my biometric override. My stomach dropped. The biometric override requires a fingerprint or a retina scan. How I whispered. Then I remembered. The wine glass. 2 weeks ago, at a dinner at the estate, I had dropped a glass. Harrison had been so helpful. He had cleaned it up. He had taken the shards away. And the security update my father insisted on last month, he had sent a team to my house to upgrade my home office retinal scanner. They had copied me. They had stolen my digital identity weeks before they tried to steal my life. They had been using my name to authorize their crimes, setting me up as the fall guy in case the feds ever came knocking. If I had died on that boat, the investigation would have found that Isolde Fairmonty was the one laundering money. Gideon would have played the grieving father who was shocked to discover his daughter's criminal double life. He was going to frame me for his own sins. I felt a surge of rage so pure it almost blinded me. It was not the hot, chaotic rage of the storm. It was a cold, precise fury. Okay, Gideon, I said softly. You want to use my name? Let's see how you like it when I use it. I opened a new window. I navigated to the secure portal of the trust. I am not going to just watch them. I told Rowan, I am going to starve them. What are you doing? I am activating Article 25. I said, the Emergency Stewardship Clause. It was a nuclear option written into the trust by my grandfather's lawyers. It stated that if the primary beneficiary suspects malfeasance or imminent threat to the assets, they can unilaterally transfer temporary control to a court-appointed independent board. It was designed to protect the money from a hostile takeover. I filled out the digital form. Reason for transfer: suspected racketeering and executive fraud. Designated interim steward, the Federal Department of Justice. I hesitated for only a second. This would alert everyone. The moment I hit enter, alarms would ring in the legal department, in the bank, and on Gideon's phone, but it would also freeze every single cent. The $40 million Gideon needed to pay his lenders by tomorrow, frozen. The operational accounts for the shipping fleet, frozen. The bribe money for the port officials, frozen. I hit submit. The screen flashed green. Transaction pending. Notification sent. I closed the laptop and looked at Rowan. "Pack up," I said. "We need to move." "Why?" "Because I just cut off the head of the snake." I said, "In about 5 minutes. My father is going to try to access his accounts and find out he is bankrupt. He is going to know I am alive. Or at least, he is going to know someone with my codes is attacking him." We grabbed the bags. I threw the burner phone into my pocket. As we were walking out the door, my phone buzzed. I froze. It was not Mara. It was not a news alert. It was a text message from a number I did not recognize. Area code 202, Washington, D.C. I opened it. There were 2 sentences. "You not being dead is a problem. We will fix it." I stared at the words. They knew. They did not just suspect. They knew. "Who is it?" Rowan asked. Seeing my face, "I do not know." I said, "But it is not Gideon." Gideon does not text. I looked at the area code again. D.C. This was not the family. This was the partners. The people Gideon borrowed money from. The people receiving the ghost boxes. They had access to the cell network. They had traced the burner phone. "Throw the phone," I yelled at Rowan. I tossed mine into the wet bushes outside the motel room. Rowan threw his after it. "Run," I said. We sprinted toward the car. The cheap sedan we had rented with the emergency cash. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking. As I started the engine, I saw a black SUV turn into the motel parking lot. It moved slowly, prowling like a shark. The windows were tinted too dark to be legal. "They found us," Rowan breathed. "How did they find us?" "The laptop," I said, slamming the car into reverse. I routed through Zurich, but they must have a backtrace on the server itself. They were waiting for me to log in. I spun the car around, tires screeching on the wet asphalt. The SUV accelerated, its engine roaring. I floored it. We shot out of the parking lot and onto the main road, merging into traffic without looking. Horns blared behind us. The SUV was right behind us. I looked in the rearview mirror. I could see the silhouette of the driver. He was not looking at the road. He was talking into a headset. "I thought I was playing chess with my father," I said, gripping the wheel. "But my father is just a pawn." I took a sharp right turn, heading toward the highway. "We are not going to the memorial just to reveal a truth. Rowan," I said, "we are going to the memorial to survive. Because the only place safe from these people is in front of 1,000 cameras." "Drive," Rowan yelled. "Just drive." I pushed the accelerator to the floor. The chase was on, and this time, it was not the ocean trying to drown me. It was the truth. 3 days later, I attended my own funeral. It was held at the Fairmonty Summer Estate in Newport, a sprawling architectural beast of white stone and glass that sat on a cliff overlooking the very ocean that was supposed to have swallowed me. The irony was heavy enough to crush a lesser setting, but here, amidst the manicured lawns and the white marquee tents, it just felt like part of the decor. I was not sitting in the front row. I was not weeping into a lace handkerchief. I was watching from the tinted window of a nondescript black van parked 300 yards away, nestled in a grove of pines that bordered the service road. Next to me sat Mara Klein, my lawyer, and 2 federal agents who looked like they had been carved out of granite. On the monitors in front of us, the high-definition feed from the news cameras broadcast the event in real time. It was a full production. My father had spared no expense. The lawn was a sea of black umbrellas and designer morning wear. There were at least 500 guests. I recognized senators, shipping magnates, and the type of socialites who only show up to events if there is a photographer present to capture their sympathy. The air was filled with the scent of white lilies, thousands of them. Gideon had ordered so many that the local florists had to import stock from 3 neighboring states. The smell must have been suffocating, a cloying sweetness meant to mask the stench of the crime. There, in the center of the spectacle, was the casket. It was mahogany, polished to a mirror shine, draped in white roses. It was closed. Of course, it had to be. There was no body to put inside it. It was a prop, a hollow box for a hollow ceremony. I zoomed in on the screen. Celeste was standing to the left of the gravesite. She was wearing a black dress that I knew for a fact cost $12,000. It was cut low enough to be daring, but high enough to be respectful, a calculated balance, just like everything else she did. She was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, but her makeup remained flawless. She looked devastated, beautiful, and utterly fake. She was playing the role of the surviving sister, the one who would now have to carry the heavy burden of the family legacy alone. And then there was Harrison, my husband. He stood to the right of the casket, his head bowed. He looked terrible, but not for the reasons the cameras believed. His skin was the color of wet parchment. He was sweating, a thin sheen of perspiration visible even through the camera lens. His hands were clasped in front of him, but I could see his thumbs twitching, rubbing against each other in a rhythmic, frantic motion. He was not grieving. He was terrified. He knew, or at least, he suspected. The freeze on the trust fund had hit 24 hours ago. The rumors I had planted about the compliance review had turned into a terrifying reality. The $10 million insurance payout he was counting on to save his life from the loan sharks was stuck in administrative limbo. He kept glancing toward the back of the crowd, where the family lawyer, a man named Sterling, not the IT guy, but the general counsel, was standing with a thick leather briefcase. Harrison was looking at that briefcase like a starving man looks at a loaf of bread. He needed those papers signed. He needed the death certificate formalized so he could force the bank's hand. Gideon stepped up to the podium. My father looked the part of the patriarch in winter. He wore a black suit that fit him perfectly, his silver hair swept back, his face drawn in a mask of stoic suffering. He adjusted the microphone. The crowd went silent. The only sound was the distant crashing of waves against the cliffs below, the same sound I had heard when I was fighting for my life in the engine room. "My friends," Gideon began. His voice was deep, resonant, practiced. "We are gathered here to say goodbye to a light that was extinguished too soon. Isolde was not just my daughter. She was the conscience of this family. She was the quiet strength that held us together." I watched the screen, my jaw tightening. The audacity was breathtaking. He was eulogizing the woman he had ordered to be thrown overboard like a bag of garbage. "She loved the sea," Gideon continued, gesturing toward the ocean. "And it is the sea that has taken her back. It is a tragedy that defies reason. But we cannot let grief paralyze us. Isolde would not want that. She was a woman of action, a woman of numbers." He paused for effect. He looked out at the crowd, making eye contact with the key investors sitting in the second row. "That is why, in her honor, I am announcing today the formation of the Isolde Fairmonti Legacy Fund. Here it comes." I whispered to Mara. Gideon pulled a document from his inside pocket. "This fund will ensure that the work Isolde cared about continues. It will support maritime safety and environmental protection, but more importantly, it will serve as the new vehicle for the family trust, ensuring that the stability of Fairmonti coastal freight remains unshaken during this difficult time. I will be assuming the role of interim director. To carry her torch forward, it was the pivot, the power grab. He was using my name to bypass the freeze I had initiated. By creating a charitable entity and moving the assets into it in my honor, he hoped to wash the money clean before the feds could lock it down. It was a classic money laundering move, wrapped in a black ribbon. Harrison looked up, a flicker of hope crossing his face. If Gideon pulled this off, the money would flow again, the debts could be paid, but I had sent a gift. Just as Gideon was about to ask for a moment of silence, a commotion rippled through the back of the crowd. Heads turned. A murmur of confusion spread like a wave. A white delivery van had pulled up to the edge of the lawn, ignoring the security detail. A man in a blue uniform stepped out. He was carrying a large, heavy chest made of dark cherry wood. Security guards stepped forward to intercept him, but Gideon, ever the showman, saw an opportunity. He waved the guards away. He thought this was a tribute. He thought some senator or business rival had sent a grand gesture of respect. "Let him through," Gideon commanded, his voice amplified by the speakers. "Let us see how the world remembers my daughter." The delivery man walked up the aisle, the heavy boots sinking slightly into the soft grass. He placed the chest at the foot of the podium, right next to the empty casket. It was beautiful. I had chosen it specifically. It looked like an old sea chest, polished and grave. On the lid, deeply engraved in gold leaf, was a single word, legacy. Gideon looked down at it. He seemed touched. He looked at the cameras, ensuring they were capturing this moment of unsolicited adoration. "A gift," Gideon said softly into the microphone. "A final tribute." He knelt down. "Don't do it." "Dad," I whispered in the van. "Don't open it." But his ego was too big. He needed to show the world that he was loved, that his family was respected. He undid the brass latches. Click, click. The sound was crisp in the silence. He lifted the heavy lid. The camera zoomed in. There was no gold inside. There were no flowers. There were no letters of condolence from the president. The chest was lined with black velvet. In the center sat 3 items, arranged with surgical precision: a thick manila envelope, sealed with red wax, a silver USB drive in a small presentation box, and a single, brass key. Gideon's smile faltered. He stared at the contents. He did not understand at first. He reached for the envelope. He turned it over. On the front, written in my handwriting he knew as well as his own, was a simple instruction: "Open when you believe you have won." The color drained from his face so fast it looked like the blood had simply evaporated. He froze. His hand trembled. He looked at the key. It was an old-fashioned safe deposit key, the kind banks issued 30 years ago. He recognized it. It was the key to his private insurance box, the one where he kept the physical ledgers of the black market deals. The one he thought was buried deep in a vault under a false name. He looked at the USB drive. He looked up. He scanned the crowd, his eyes wide, wild, searching. The grieving father mask shattered, revealing the panicked animal underneath. Harrison stepped forward, peering into the box. I saw his lips move. "What is it?" Gideon slammed the lid shut. The noise was like a gunshot. Bang! A ripple of shock went through the crowd. This was not part of the script. This was violence. "Nothing," Gideon said into the microphone, his voice high and strained. "Just personal mementos. We will examine them later." He tried to stand up, but his legs were unsteady. He looked at the delivery man, but the man was already walking away. Gideon looked at the envelope again, which he was now clutching in his hand like it was a grenade. "Open when you believe you have won." He knew I was alive, in that split second. He knew. The text message he had received yesterday about fixing it, he must have thought his partners had handled me. He must have thought I was finally gone. But this box, this was not the work of a partner. This was the work of a victim who had become the judge. Then, the final piece of the stage set fell into place. Outside the main gates, beyond the rows of parked limousines, 3 black SUVs pulled up. They did not have funeral flags. They did not have flowers. They had government plates. The doors opened in unison. 12 people stepped out. They were not wearing mourning black. They were wearing charcoal gray suits and navy windbreakers with yellow lettering on the back. FBI, IRS, criminal investigation. They did not run. They did not draw weapons. They simply walked past the security checkpoint, moving with the terrifying, inexorable pace of the law. The crowd parted for them. The silence that fell over the lawn now was different. It wasn't respectful. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of anticipation. Gideon stood on the podium, the legacy chest at his feet, the envelope in his hand. He looked at the approaching agents. Harrison saw them too. He stumbled back, bumping into the casket. He looked like he was about to vomit. He looked at Celeste. Celeste was frozen, her tissue hovering halfway to her face. For the first time in her life, she didn't know where the camera was. The lead agent, a tall woman with sharp glasses, Mara's contact, stopped 10 feet from the podium. She did not look at the crowd. She did not look at the casket. She looked straight at Gideon. "Gideon Fairmonti," she said. Her voice carried clearly without a microphone. Gideon tried to speak. He tried to summon the indignation of a billionaire interrupted at a funeral. "This is a private service," he sputtered. "How dare you? We are not here to arrest you." "Mr. Fairmonti," the agent said, her voice calm, professional, and loud enough for the first 10 rows to hear. "Not yet." She pointed to the chest. "We are here to collect the evidence and to ensure the safety of the witness." "Witness," Gideon whispered. "What witness?" The agent didn't answer. She just turned slightly, looking back toward the road, toward the grove of pine trees, toward the black van. Gideon followed her gaze. Harrison followed her gaze. 500 people turned their heads. I looked at Mara. "It is time," I said. Mara nodded. She spoke into her radio. "Clear the path." I opened the door of the van. The cool sea breeze hit my face. It smelled of salt and pine, not lilies. I stepped out onto the service road. I was not wearing black. I was wearing a white trench coat, belted tightly at the waist, sharp, clean, alive. I began the long walk toward the tent. I could see them on the screens, and I could see them with my own eyes in the distance. I saw the moment Gideon saw me. I saw his knees buckle. I saw Harrison grab the edge of the casket to keep from collapsing. I kept walking. I was the ghost they had created. I was the legacy they had wanted to steal, and I was about to deliver the eulogy they deserved. The distance between the service road and the podium was 150 yards. It was a stretch of manicured Kentucky bluegrass that my father paid $40,000 a year to maintain. As I stepped onto it, the white trench coat I wore caught the wind, snapping softly. It was the only sound I heard, because the silence that had fallen over the crowd was absolute. Gideon was still holding the microphone. His mouth was half open, frozen in the middle of a syllable. He looked like a man having a stroke in slow motion. His eyes were locked on me, wide and glassy, struggling to process the visual data that contradicted his entire reality. I kept walking. I did not rush. I walked with the measured, rhythmic pace of an auditor entering a boardroom to deliver a subpoena. I saw the faces in the crowd turn toward me. 500 people, friends, business partners, rivals. I saw the blood drain from their faces. I saw a senator drop his program. To them, I was not a woman. I was a resurrection. I reached the front row. Celeste was standing 5 feet away. She was holding a crystal flute of water. As our eyes met, her hand simply stopped working. The glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the stone pavers. The sound was sharp, violent, and perfect. It broke the spell. Isolde Harrison whispered. It was a sound of pure terror. He gripped the edge of the mahogany casket, the empty box he had bought to bury his guilt, and swayed. He looked at me as if I were a monster dredged up from the trench. In his script, the dead stayed dead. In his world, problems were solved by water and silence. I walked past him. I did not look at him. Not yet. I stepped up onto the podium. Gideon backed away. He stumbled, his heel catching on the base of the microphone stand. He had to grab the lectern to keep from falling. The great Gideon Fairmonti, the titan of industry, looked small. He looked old. I stood before the microphone. I looked out at the sea of black umbrellas and shocked faces. I looked at the cameras that were zooming in, capturing every pixel of this impossible moment. I leaned forward. "Do not sign anything," I said. My voice was calm, amplified across the lawn, echoing off the white stone of the mansion. Today is not a memorial. I continued. Today is an inventory. Gideon found his voice. It was a strangled, desperate croak. Isolde, my God, you are alive. It is a miracle. We thought the boat. Stop, I said. I did not shout. I just cut the air with the word. I turned to the federal agents standing by the stage. I nodded to the lead agent, the woman with the sharp glasses. Secure the chest, I said. 2 agents moved forward, flanking the legacy chest. Gideon made a pathetic, instinctive move to block them. But he stopped when he saw the badges. That box does not contain mementos. Dad, I said, looking at him, it contains the ledger you thought you burned 10 years ago. It contains the shipping manifests for the ghost boxes you have been moving through the port of Newark. And it contains the original recording of the conversation you had with my husband 3 nights ago. Gideon's face went gray. That is a lie, he hissed, leaning in so only I could hear. You are mentally unstable. You have been under stress. The agent stepped up to the audio-visual console that controlled the giant screens flanking the stage. These screens were meant to play a montage of my childhood photos, set to sad violin music. Instead, the agent plugged in the silver USB drive from the chest. Watch the screen, I told the crowd. The image flickered, static, and then clarity. It was the salon of the Larkhaven. The timestamp was 3 days ago. A collective gasp went through the audience. On the screen, my body was slumped on the sofa. Harrison was standing over me. She is out. Harrison's voice boomed through the speakers. Then Celeste walked into the frame. She was smiling. She took a sip of wine. Is it done? The crowd watched in horrified silence. They watched Gideon enter. They heard him give the order. The current is moving south-southeast. We drop her in 20 minutes. On the screen. Harrison picked me up. Celeste laughed. Do not scratch the floor when you drag her. I looked at Celeste. She was shaking her head, backing away, her hands covering her mouth. No, she whimpered. That is fake. AI. It is a deep fake. I turned back to the microphone. It is not a deep fake, I said. The digital signature on that file matches the internal security system of the yacht. The metadata is verified, and the witness who recorded it is currently in federal protective custody, giving a deposition that details exactly how you ordered him to be executed too. I looked at Harrison. He was on his knees. He had collapsed, not in prayer, but in the total failure of his legs to support the weight of his sins. Why, I asked him. It was the only question that still mattered. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. Real tears this time. Tears of self-pity. They made me. He sobbed. Gideon, he owned my debt. He said he would kill me if I didn't help. I had no choice. Izzy, I swear, I did it to save myself so I could figure out a way to save you later. I stared at him. The lie was so pathetic it was almost insulted me. I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket. It was the printout of the insurance beneficiary change. Really, I asked. I held the paper up to the camera. You changed my life insurance policy 3 months ago. Harrison, on our anniversary, you forged my signature. I looked at the crowd. He assigned $10 million to himself. I said, and on the very next day, a wire transfer cleared his gambling debts. I turned back to him. You were not coerced. Harrison, you were not a victim. You were an investor. You bet against my life because the payout was better than the marriage. Harrison shook his head, reaching out to grab the hem of my coat. Izzy, please, I love you. I was sick. I needed help. I stepped back, pulling my coat out of his reach. You are not being forced to sign anything today. Harrison, I said, my voice ice cold. You are just being forced to face who you really are. I looked at the agents. Take them. The agents moved. It was swift and professional. They did not rough them up. They did not need to. The humiliation was the weapon. They cuffed Gideon first. He tried to straighten his tie, tried to maintain some shred of dignity, but the metal clicked shut on his wrists, binding his hands behind his back. The great puppet master was finally on strings. Celeste screamed when they touched her. "Don't touch me." "Do you know who I am?" "You are a co-conspirator in a first-degree murder investigation," the agent said, spinning her around and cuffing her. They pulled Harrison to his feet. He was limp, sobbing like a child. As they dragged him past the podium, he looked at me one last time. "I did it for our future," he whispered, a delusional mantra he had probably repeated to himself 1,000 times. I looked him in the eye. "You married me for the future," I said. I gestured to the agents, to the cameras, to the prison cell waiting for him. "I give you the present." They dragged him away. The sirens began to wail in the distance, a chorus of consequences coming to claim the Fairmonty name. I stood alone on the podium. The wind picked up, blowing my hair across my face. I looked at the crowd. They were still silent, waiting for a cue, waiting for me to tell them what to do. "Go home," I said into the microphone. "The show is over. The legacy is closed." I walked off the stage. I did not look back at the mansion. I did not look back at the empty casket. I walked toward the black van where Mara was waiting. 6 months later, I am standing on the deck of a small sailboat. It is not a yacht. It is a 30-foot sloop, functional and sturdy. The name painted on the stern is The Auditor. The wind is brisk, smelling of salt and freedom. I kept the money, not the trust fund I dissolved that. I liquidated the Fairmonty assets, paid off the legitimate creditors, and donated the remaining $40 million to a fund for victims of corporate fraud and a new maritime safety initiative. But I kept my own money, the money I earned, and I kept a small portion of the settlement to ensure Rowan never has to fix another air conditioner for a minimum wage again. He is in engineering school now. Tuition paid in full. I checked the GPS. It is working perfectly. The radio is humming with the chatter of other sailors. I am alone, but I am not lonely. For 30 years, I was defined by my name. I was a Fairmonty. I was an asset. I was a target. Now, I am just Isolde. I look at the horizon, where the sky meets the water in a sharp, clean line. I used to fear the ocean. I used to fear the depth of it, the way it could swallow you whole without leaving a trace. But now I know the truth. The ocean is honest. It kills you if you are careless, but it never lies to you. It never smiles at you while holding a knife behind its back. I tighten the sheet, feeling the sail catch the wind. The boat heels over. Cutting through the waves, I am not running away. I am just navigating. My family thought they could write my ending. They thought they could close the book on Isolde Fairmonty. But they forgot the most important rule of accounting. The books always have to balance. And I have finally closed the ledger. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed the journey of Isolde and her cold, calculated path to justice. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening from a busy city, a quiet room, or maybe even on a boat somewhere? Please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this revenge drama, please subscribe to the channel Juliet Revenge Stories, like the video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people. Your support means the world. Stay safe, and always check the signature.